we're going to do another install video with a COMsole, with the blackout headsets, a high gain antenna. We're going to need some basic tools like an 8mm screwdriver and a wrench. A drill obviously helps, and we're going to be installing that in this R-Max. So Yamaha R-Max, pretty popular machine now. Show you how the COMsole goes in, and it looks really clean once it's in. And so let's get into it. First thing we're going to do is release the hood, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Twist these up and pull back. Pull it back out, and the hood is open. Now there's an accessories plugs that are behind this firewall, so in order to get that out, we're going to have to take some of these 10mm bolts out. And then there's a couple clips, so I'll show you where those are at. Just lift up on these clips. Maybe. There we go. And this should come out. There's two little vent hoses right this. You can just pop these out and slide it out. So, and all we need to do is tilt it forward so we can get to these right here. Now these have got, I just took the little clip off, and so I'm just going to test it. I already know that the brown wire is the hot one, but I'm just going to show you guys. So you can just do a multimeter, put it on the negative, test. There shouldn't be anything going. And when I put it on the positive, you're going to see 12 volts. Just like that. So I know the brown is keyed hot because I got the key on. And now if I turn the key off, you're going to see that that goes off. Now you can see with the key off on the brown wire, there's no voltage. So I know that's a keyed power. So that's the wire we're going to tap and to make this thing turn on with the key. So here's a close-up of it. So I just took this off. This is just a dummy. There's others in there too. You can see that there's like 3 or 4 of them in there, and this is the one we're going to use. I've already tested it. So the brown's hot, or keyed accessory hot, and the black one. And I'm going to just, since I don't have this connector, I'm just going to use some heat shrink connectors and pop the end off. So with my power wire, since it's got the big fuse pocket on it, I'm just going to feed the SAE part, which is the part that plugs into the COMsole. I'm going to feed it up through the A-pillar. So I'm just going to leave this out and feed it up through there. So it's tight, but it can go. So there's a little notch right there. You should be able to work it up in through there, but it is very tight. Okay, now we're just going to pull enough slack and it's going to reach the COMsole up there, and we're just pull it loose for right now because we don't have the COMsole mounted, but I know it's about that much, and we'll button that up a little bit later. Now that we're about to do some wiring, I always disconnect the battery post so there's no chance of shorting anything out. So I'm just going to disconnect the battery post. This one looks like it's some 12mm, so go ahead and cut this connector off. Again, I told you the brown is hot and the black is ground. So I always like to work with one at a time. So I'm just going to work with the ground first. With ours, like you said, I want to work with the ground first. I'm going to clip this end off and strip it down and put it into the connector. I always like to pull up on them, make sure they're there, just to make sure they're in good. Then I always finish them off with my Klein tool, so I know that it's good and tight. Give it a nice tug. It's good and in there, and then I'll heat shrink it. You just heat shrink it till it becomes transparent. Okay, now it's time to do the red wire. Now that I know that this is hot and I'm not going to mix it up. You shouldn't be able to mix it up because you got the fuse right there, but I like to take extra precautions. Squeeze it down, make sure it's on there. Nice thing about the COM is that both the radio and the intercom only pull 9 amp max together, and that's when it's transmitting. So most of the time you're less than that. Like the intercom itself is only a 2.5 amp, and the radio is a 7 amp fuse on its individual. So it's not pulling a great deal on your machine. So a lot of times we don't have to have extra like relays and stuff. You can put a relay on here, and relays are really nice, but not necessary. If you watched our other install videos, like on the Razor, make sure that you pre-install your coax, because we don't know what size coax you're going to get. So, because it's hard to, once you've got that up there, it's hard to feed the end of the coax in there. So, I'm just going to feed it through right now. Well, it's off. The PL259 connector side, I'm just going to feed it right down through there. And pull this guy off right here. And this one if you want to. So you can get easy access to it, even though it's pretty tight. Hand tighten it up. You do have to kind of push it in because it has that the pin in there. The pin's got to touch the pin of the PL259 connector. So now that it's in there, I can reinstall my grommets. So with your COMsole, you're going to get a pack with a bunch of bolts and nuts and goodies and stuff like that that you're going to be using for the install. Some of it you won't be using, actually a lot of it you won't be using, but we have everything that you need, like 80 millimeters bolts and 45 millimeter and 16 millimeter. So when I dump this out, drill bit that we'll be using a little bit later to drill through the holes, and then you got like different size bolts that you can use to figure out what size, how much of a tip you want on the, how much you want to tip the COMsole on the front. So if you want to tip it down further, if your roof sticks up a little further, you're going to want to use the 80 millimeter. If it's a little further down, you got the 60 or the 45, or if you want it right up against the roof, you got a 12 millimeter. So. We got this cutout right here. It'll fit nicely right over here. This is going to take most of the weight. This is the part where you need somebody to help you. And then you just take the clamps, go through those holes, put it up against there. This is a 7 millimeter. Kind of snug it at first. I'm going to do the same thing with this other side. And then I've got to measure center. Now you can let go. Now you can see that these clamps hold like 90% of the weight. The bolts just keep it from vibrating as you're going down the road. Okay, now that I put this perpendicular on the edge, it's just under 18. It's like 17 7/8 on this one. And I've measured it on both sides so I know it's centered. Yours might be different because of the roll bar, so just check that on both directions. And now I'm going to put the bolts up through here. The backwards direction of what I'm going to install. I'm going to push it all the way up so it's tight, and I'm going to take my marker. I'm going to find out where it's at, just go barely under it. I'm going to mark the roof. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Find out where it is, just about there. Mark the roof, and now I'm going to pull it, loosen the clamps and pull it back down so I can drill the hole. Okay, now that I've measured the holes with the bolts and I marked them. I'm just going to loosen this down so I can drill my holes. I'm just going to loosen just a bit, and I'm just going to let the COM just rest just like that. And now I've got a clear shot to drill my holes. Okay, with the drill bit that we gave you, just put it right there. And this one we're going to be using the 80 mil bolts because his roof is really tall, and that'll pitch the angle down as far as we can. You can also use a piece of all thread if you want, if you need more than 80 mil, but 80 mil is the longest bolt we can get. With the 80 mil bolts, you got these neoprene washers that'll seal the top up. So I'm just going to stick these through. Just like that. If you choose the 60 or 45, you'll do the same thing with these neoprenes. So it just depends on which bolt you get. And then on the bottom side, I'm going to poke this through the top. And on the bottom side, I'm going to use this little washer and then this little nut to kind of hold them in place until I can put the spacers on.
Go.
Okay, stick these down through. And now I'm going to go for the bottom side. Put this washer on. Then you're just going to thread it all the way to the top and just snug it down. It doesn't need to be super tight, it just needs to be snug. Just 8 millimeter. See how that neoprene just crushes just a little bit? That's all you need. Okay, you just put the spacers on, the 1/2 inch ones first. This one's the 80 mil, so it's going to suck up all 5 of them. Now you just poke these through, and then with the lock washer, the Nylox nut washer, or nut, sorry, the Nylox nut, not washer. And wrench, your 8 millimeter, just gonna get at least full engagement. So when I say full engagement, make sure you can just barely see the threads sticking out the Nylox. Now I'm going to tighten the hose clamps back up, and we're in business. You can see this thing is firm. I mean, I'm shaking the whole car, so this thing is in there. So I like to wire loom my Coax, so I got a little wire loom puller. Okay, I'm just going to kind of run my Coax wild for right now. I'm going to go over this bar, over this bar. So I'm going to have to loosen this just a bit to get the Coax past it. So I'm going to just give this a little bit more room. So I couldn't get this past. Now I can. Slide it. This, just for your information, this is actually a 7-foot Coax for this 2-seater. And the customer requested his intended to be on the passenger side B pillar. So now that I've loosened it up, I'm going to tighten it back down. The customer requested the antenna be as low as possible, so it's because he's got a toy hauler, he doesn't want to pull it on and off. Typically you want it as high as possible to get the most range, but you also don't want to take your Coax and coil it up in a coil. The coil's bad. So if you're going to have to take a longer route, that's the better way to do it if you're going to need to do it. So now that I've kind of adjusted my swivel antenna mount, I've pre-adjusted it where I kind of want it. So it's about level. And now what I'm going to do is just tighten up the bolts. Again, I like to put a little WD-40 like on the other clamp. And then this is a 7 millimeter. Careful, these suckers can bite you sometimes, so just loose for right now. Then do the same thing with the other one. Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now that it's loose, I'm just gonna kind of slip it in there, put it in place, and tighten it down. So since the ground wire needs to come to here, I'm going to actually feed down through here, go behind the plastic, and I'm going to probably ground it to this bolt right here. That's a 10 millimeter. For me to get this Yamaha's got this very well sealed up, so for me to get fish over here, you can try a wire fish, but it's really tight. So I'm just going to pop this panel off. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are little Allens. These are 4.0 Allens. So cool. Pop the other two 10 millimeters and the one more 4.0 Allen, and that's just going to give me just enough room to fish the wire. I'm just going to feed it through here just like that, and then I'll finish up by, I just need to grind or file off just a little bit of paint and put this behind here, and then I'll secure the zip tie the extra onto this roll bar over here. So install this panel, put all these 4.0 Allens back into place. Remember, this goes on here like this, gasket goes down, make sure this goes up in there, gasket faces down, and for right now I'm just going to snug it down. We'll button things up here in just a little bit, but that's basically how it goes. I'm going to take a crescent wrench on there and just give it an extra quarter turn as soon as I can't turn it anymore with my hands. Remember, this is brass, so don't strip it out. So since the COMsole comes with a 4 PTT splitter and I can't feed it down through here with all this bigger stuff, I'm going to have to unplug it from the back of the COMsole. So to do that, just pull this grommet off, and if you reach up inside here, you're not going to be able to see it on the camera, but if you reach up inside there, it's the wire right next to the power wire. So if you go all the way over to the right, there's a power wire, and I'll show it on another still shot. But right next to the power wire is the PTT button, and you just pull that guy out, and then it feeds out of the top here, and then we can pull it out. And so I'm going to feed it up through the back is what I'm going to do. So he wanted the hole mount PTT, and I talked him into taking one of his plugs out for a rocker switch, and we're just going to put a 1/2 inch hole in it and feed the hole mount PTT through it, and it'll look really clean on his dash. So with the same panel down where we tapped into the power, I'm just going to reach my hand underneath the wheel well, pass the wire to myself. I'm just going to come straight up this A-pillar, and this is a tech tip. So where your push-to-talk wire goes down, you don't want it going down the same side as your power wire, because the power wire can keep the PTT open in extreme cases. So it's just good practice to have the low voltage on one side and the high power on the other. So I'm just going to come up through here and put the PTT wire back in the back of the intercom, using this grommet here. Sometimes if you got bigger hands, you might need some needle nose pliers, but most of the time you can feel it up inside there. And it's right between the first hole, right next to the power wire that comes out of the back of the intercom. And I'll show a picture of it on the video. And I've got it in there, so. And now I'm just going to button the wire up, and we'll go from there. undo this bread tie that's holding the headset wire. Make sure you grab headset wire 1. It's loose. I'm going to go ahead and run it along here and just drop it over the shoulder, but I'm going to my last one. I usually put a cinch strap on it. Same thing as the other side, just this side's got the coax and the headset wire 2. The last thing we're going to do is button up the power wire. And again, the power wire we want to keep as far away from low voltage as possible. Unfortunately, we got 3 wires on this one, so I'm just going to keep it kind of on the bottom, so it's 3, 3, and 3, so 33 degrees and 33 degrees, or, you know, thirds away from each other. And I'm just going to tighten up my ground and put my hood back on. This guy elected to have the headset rack, one of my favorite accessories. Okay, occasionally, well actually more often than not on these Yamahas and Hondas, our noise filter doesn't quite cut everything on these. For some reason the Hondas and the Yamahas, our noise filter struggles a little bit. So a lot of times we have to add this Kenwood PG-3B, and you just put it right in the inline. So I've cut the main line. You don't need the ground. These are directional, so you just look at the back and find out which direction it goes. We've tried to reach out to Kenwood to sell them to us, but they haven't been able to sell them to us, so you can find them online, just the Kenwood PG-3B, and I'll show you how to install it. And you'll know because if you plug it into an external power, or if you power it with an external battery, the transmission noise goes away, and I'm finding it on this one. Now that I got that side, now I'm going to do the incoming power side.